Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To my fellow panel, my name is Umar Hadim Jamal. In this video, I am going to present my research project and the title is Perceived Barriers to Physical Activity Among Secondary School Students. For the background of study, perceived barriers can be characterized by internal and external barriers. According to Justin 2013, he stated that internal barriers are the factors that can be determined by an individual's personal decision, while external barriers can refer to other factors that can affect beyond an individual's control. Then, according to Ellison 1999, perceived barriers seem to be obstacles to behavior that could otherwise help prevent illness and improve health. This can affect environmental, external, such as lack of family support, and psychological, which is internal, such as lack of motivation. For the statement problem, according to Daskapan 2006, perceived external barriers resulting more important rather than perceived internal barriers among adolescents in Turkey. So by doing this research, I want to determine either adolescent in Malaysia resulting the same result or not. Ellison 1999 also stated that several studies got that lower levels of activity among older adolescents, especially female. Many teenagers do not continue their daily physical activity once high school is over, and maybe not even into middle school, according to Grubbs and Carter 2002. So by doing this research, the barriers or factors that lead the teenagers can be identified. So from that statement, we can relate with Alberga 2012 statement where youth or adolescent has been recognized as a stage where it can determine their growth, development, and persistence of obesity that can affect into adulthood. So we can aware by know their participation towards physical activity at this stage through this study. For the research objective, there are two objectives for my research. The first one is to determine the perceived barriers to physical activity among secondary school students, and the second one is to determine the major factors of perceived barriers to physical activity among secondary school students. For the literature review, according to Daskapan 2006, external barriers score was significantly higher than the internal barriers. He stated that lack of time is the major problem for students to participate in physical activity due to a busy class schedule. Other than that, previous studies also stated where the most common to participate in physical activity among younger people were external barriers, where the reason was not enough time, according to Justin 2013. According to Cooper 2015, young people will achieve moderate to intense physical activity of at least 60 minutes. Nonetheless, statistics show that these criteria are not followed by the majority of young people, so the study can observe young people nowadays about their physical activity and health condition. Now we move to the methodology. For the research design, my research used quantitative research design, which is survey research. Survey research can be defined as the collection of information from a sample of individuals through their response to questions according to Check and Scott 2012. For the sampling, my main population was secondary school students in Malaysia, so the sample I will randomly take among secondary school students in Malaysia. The sampling technique that I have been used in my research was convenience sampling, where I just took the result from any students from secondary school that completely answer my questionnaire. But during pandemic situation, it is hard to get the access for students in a whole Malaysia, so I had only get 150 respondents to become my sample in my research. For the instrumentation, I use only questionnaire using Google Form, and the questionnaire was self-administered in previous journal by Daskapan 2006 and have two sections. For the section A, it is about demographic, so the participants need to answer several variables such as gender, age, height, weight, exercise, habits, name of school, and state. Section B, the students need to answer the exercise various items according to the Daskapan 2006 questionnaire. So let me explain more details about the items. The questionnaire had been modified by the order where the questionnaires have 12 items. The perceived barriers were divided into two barriers, which are internal and external barriers. Each barriers have three factors, which are for internal barriers. The factors are lack of energy, lack of motivation, and lack of self-efficacy. While for the external barriers, the factors are lack of resource, lack of social support, and lack of time. So here is the items for the questionnaire. Next, for the data procedure, I've got ethical approval by Faculty Sports Science and Recreation, and then ask permission to do research where I ask to the students to become respondents, and then give explanation to the sample about the study and testing. I've briefly explained on the form in details with dual language, Bahasa Melayu and English, so that the students can understand to answer the questionnaire. Distribute questionnaire through social media, and I also ask for help with my nearest contacts and students to distribute my questionnaire to anyone that's still in secondary school students through social media. And then the data collected and analyzed. So here is the data analysis for my research objective. For the number one, to determine the perceived barriers to physical activity among secondary school students. The data analysis was descriptive statistic. The second one, to determine the major factors of perceived barriers to physical activity among secondary school students. The data analysis is descriptive statistics 2 to get the scores of mean and SD. For the results, the data of the students was normal based on the skewness and courtesies. So here is the scores of the data where I get the mean and SD for all items for all and for both gender. For the first objective, the results stated that external barriers with the mean 18.21 and the standard deviation is 6.618 was significantly higher than the score of the internal barriers with mean 16.47 and the standard deviation is 5.964. For the second objective, the most important factors of external barrier is lack of resource with 6.66 and the standard deviation is 2.722, while the most important factors for internal barriers are lack of motivation with mean 6.00 and the standard deviation is 2.134. Based on the table result also, I can determine the highest value of item, which is question 3. I've been thinking about other recreational activities with my friends are more entertaining than exercise with mean 3.79 and the standard deviation is 1.198. I also found out there are 4 other items had been scored more than 3, which is the first one is question 8. I have no exercise equipment at my home that I use with mean 3.41 and the standard deviation is 1.475. For the second, question 7, there is no fitness center that I could get to with mean 3.27 and the standard deviation is 1.510. And the third one is question 3. My parents give academic success priority over exercise with mean 3.17 with standard deviation is 1.437. And the last one, question 11. I have no leisure time for exercise because of my busy lesson schedule with mean 3.04 with SD 1.144. Lastly, I can determine the lowest value of item, which question 4 is I've not been thinking about exercise has positive effects on my health with mean 2.60 and the standard deviation is 1.208. Now I will discuss based on the result. Perceived external barriers important than perceived internal barriers. This result accordance with previous journal by Daskapan 2006, where he stated that perceived external barriers resulting more important rather than perceived internal barriers among adolescents. But there are some studies that have found different results that perceived internal barriers are as significant to young people as perceived external barriers, according to Ellison 2005 and Gil 6 2004. This is because the study that have been made by Guse are focusing on transition students from high school to the first year of the university. So the students is still trying to adapt with new environments during the study. So the result was more on lack on self-efficacy, which indicate the internal barriers. Next, the important factors for external barriers was lack of resource and for internal barriers was lack of motivation. There is previous study does not accordance with the result where lack of time and lack of energy became the major factors for external and internal barriers among the student, according to Daskapan 2006. This is because he did a research among university students and basically university students do not have a problem with resources to do exercise, so they just having a problems with time and become fatigued to do exercise because of busy with class or assignment. Next, all the items related to perceived internal barriers have low rates. Only one item which indicated lack of motivation reach a significant level. This previous study had a similar result where the lack of motivation and too tired were two internal barriers among sedentary teens and young adults that were commonly cited, according to Ellison 1999 and Tape 1989. This is because teenagers wanting to doing other things with their time, lack of interest and schoolwork, so there is no motivation for them to do exercise or physical activity. Next, the item was the highest value of the item is question 3, which is I've been thinking about other recreational activities with my friends are more entertaining than exercise. According to Jenkinson Ebenson 2010, he stated that low interest in physical activity and more importantly social pressure were among the most commonly ranked barriers to participation in secondary schools. This is because during the transition to an immersion in secondary school, he stated that adolescents are often taking greater ownership of their own decisions and attitudes towards both academic learning and physical activity. And this transition itself highlight that the different influences will affect their choices to participate, including cognitive, behavioral, and environmental factors. For the other 4 items that have scored mean more than 3, I have no exercise equipment at my home that I use. There is no fitness center that I could get to. My parents give academic success priority over exercise, and I have no leisure time for exercise because of my busy lesson schedule. This can be agreed with previous study by Kim 2006. The most frequently cited obstacles were identified as I don't have time, I'm too tired, and exercise doesn't interest me. In the general state that those who cited no interest as a barrier also answered that they would rather be doing other things than exercise. Lack of motivation is lack of motivation, which is internal barriers, and lack of resource, which is external barrier, resulted high mean for both gender. The finding is not in accordance with previous studies because the studies found that there is investigation mentioned that 77 adolescent girls noted lack of self-efficacy was prime factor for physical inactivity, according to Robbins 2003. This is because the study was in US and used girls aged 11 to 14 years old as the subjects. The culture is at this age they more focusing on their appearance and scared to do physical activity because it will lose their confidence. In a more recent report, loss of confidence was recognized as a barrier among male teenagers, according to Ellison 2005. This result may be used and can focus attention on approach in secondary school communities to improve physical activity. This demographic has been considered as a major sector of our younger and our potential representative of social opinion, according to Leslie 1999. Despite this fact, few studies have investigated the barriers between university students, according to Brown 2005 and Grubbs 2002. So this is my reference for my study. Before I end my presentation, there are lots of things that I've learned on my journey to finish this research. I found that socio-cultural and academic profiles of the students that participated in my study may be different from the students who do not have a chance or can answer this online questionnaire because of the limited access during this pandemic and poor connection area. So for the future researcher, the questionnaire can be distributed through paper form and online form to the students so that the study involve varied students from different socio-cultural or economic profile. Perhaps different internal or external perceived barriers to physical activity will be important and can be identified more. So I hope that this study can give a little awareness to all parties who are directly or indirectly involved in further to increase the interest of students or young people to always do physical activities and live healthier. So that's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.